as many of you might know, the Ford Motor Company recently took the rather odd decision to kill off one of its biggest selling and best loved models. After 47 years, it decided to stop making the Fiesta Supermini. Now, I've never owned a Ford Fiesta, but in my 30 odd years in the motor industry, I've driven plenty of them. In fact, I actually passed my driving test in a Ford Fiesta. So I get the love that people have for the little Ford, and I can understand why people got a little bit hot under the blue collar with the blue oval. Now, the reason that Ford stopped making the Fiesta mainly is because it said it couldn't make any money out of the car anymore. There's so much safety legislation required and technology needed to be put into small cars that it just couldn't make ends meet anymore, and it just couldn't make any profit out of the vehicle. And of course, Ford itself wants to turn itself into an all-electric brand and therefore wants to concentrate on higher profit models. Now, I find that a really odd decision, and I find it a really odd thing to say as well, because plenty of manufacturers make small Superminis and make them well. Peugeot 208, Renault with the Clio, the Vauxhall Corsa, the Fiesta's main rival, is still a massive seller here in the UK. The Toyota Yaris, the Honda Jazz. In fact, it's difficult to think of a manufacturer in the volume sector that doesn't make a Supermini, which means there are plenty out there that's willing to take the place of your beloved Fiesta on the driveway. Now, one of those brands, believe it or not, is MG, which turned 100 years old this year. And they're not just here to make up the numbers, because in 2023, MG, alongside Tesla, were Europe's fastest growing car brand. Of course, they've got a real leaning towards electrification, which means it's no surprise to learn that the new MG3 is a hybrid. But don't for a second think that that's going to make it easy for MG, because not only does it have to go up against all those other cars that I've just spoke about, the Clio, the 208, the Corsa, the Jazz, it's also got to go up against one of the best Superminis that you can buy, which just turned 25 years old this year, the Škoda Fabia. Welcome to this week's twin test, welcome to the MG3, welcome to the Škoda Fabia. Please sit yourself down, make yourself comfortable in the house of cars. Now, before I get started on this week's, this will be our first actual ever twin test on House of Cars. There you go. Could I ask a little favour of you, if you don't mind? I've got a few subscribers, but I'd like a few more. So if you're not already a subscriber, would you please consider becoming one? And tell your friends as well, because they might want to subscribe too. Once you've done that, press the bell button down below, because that's the way you get notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. Once you watch it, if you enjoy it, which I really hope you do, and of course give it a little thumbs up, and of course don't forget, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about the cars I review on the channel, such as the MG3 and Škoda Fabia, and of course on the House of Cars channel as a whole. So MG turned 100 years old in 2024, but they are a very different brand to the one that Cecil Kimber founded 100 years ago. You're probably aware of the fact they're fully owned by the Chinese now. Now, there's a lot of, I'm going to say prejudice maybe sometimes against MG owned car brands. And of course the EU are thinking of imposing tariffs to stop sort of like the cheaper Chinese cars flooding the European market. But MG have got a plan. They're a brand with a plan, because they're going to probably establish a manufacturing plant in Europe somewhere that's going to overcome those tariffs being placed on them. And they are a good value for money brand. And they hope to sell over 300,000 units in 2024 across Europe, which is ambitious and very, very doable for them. They do have a leaning towards electrification, but the MG3 is a hybrid. It's not a fully electric car, and that's important because hybridization is a good way of keeping costs down, running costs, which is interesting because that was one of the things that Skoda has always been very, very good at. They've always been seen as a low cost, dare I suggest, budget brand when you go back, 30 plus years ago. But since they've been part of the Volkswagen group, things have changed. And of course, the Fabia turned 25 years old this year because it was one of the first cars. And they've really elevated themselves as being sort of like, gone from being sort of like a budget brand to being a real, well, dare I suggest, almost upmarket player in the Supermini class. In many ways, the Fabia is a much better built car than a lot of the cars that I mentioned right at the start. But rather than going hybrid and keeping costs down, Skoda are sticking to a tried and tested formula of just pure and simple internal combustion with the Fabia. So who does it best? Who's got it right? Hybrid with MG or internal combustion with Skoda? Well, let's put it through our first ever twin test and find out. Right, as always, we're going to start off with how the cars look. And we're going to kick off with the MG3 because it's the newer of the two. It's a very different car to the previous generation MG3, which was on sale for quite a number of years. But thankfully, this is a very different car to that one. And we'll talk about the drive, obviously, as we go through the review. It's styling, right. It's a bit generic for me, isn't it? I mean, if you were to cover that up, and you were to replace it with a Hyundai badge, you would think it's probably a Hyundai from about 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, it's all right, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not got the sort of, there's no real sort of like standout feature of the car. And the problem I think with MG styling at the moment is they don't seem to be sort of like honing in on a particular theme that most manufacturers do. You know, I mean, as I say, it's quite a generic looking little car and it doesn't really bear any resemblance to anything else in the MG range. And I'm not suggesting they should be like Audi with its Russian doll-esque styling sort of design language, but just have something. The MG4's a good looking car, you know, the electric hatchback, really sharp and angular sort of lines and really sharp creases. And yet this is more curvy and swoops and stuff like that. It just doesn't really tie it in with the rest of the range for me. But it's not a bad looking car, it's all right. It's just a bit generic looking. You get LED headlights on the trophy model, which this one is. You get this weird kind of big black sort of like open kind of grille, but it's open in just bits rather than it's filled in at the side here, this wide mouth. But then you've got this sort of like area here that just kind of swings around. You get a nice little bit of sort of like fake carbon fibre on the front splitter, which gives it a little bit of interest there. And of course your big chromed MG octagon on the front there. Nice little integrated front camera on the car, and there's a lot of tech on both cars, but especially on the MG, and that's part of it. But like I say, it's inoffensive, it's all right, it's not a bad looking car, it's just not particularly wow. Now you'll see more of those kind of swoops and curves as you come down the side of the car. There's two models in the range. There's the SE and the Trophy. They both get these 16-inch alloy wheels. But again, they're alloy wheels that I think look like an aftermarket Halford's job from about 5 years ago. But anyway, they're nice enough, as I say, and they are standard, so I can't really complain about that. But you see what I mean here? You get this lovely line that comes in there and drops off, and you get another one that just curves into the door there, so there's a bit more interest on the side of it. Again, the technology, little camera in the door mirror there, very good. You can tell it's the Trophy model because you get the privacy glass on the back, which you don't get on the SE. You also get keyless entry as well, so you've got the little buttons on the door handle. You've got the key in the pocket, you can just unlock the door, and then it comes into this sort of like truncated rear end here with a little roof spoiler at the top and your petrol flap on that side. Now, it's not a plug-in hybrid, it's a self-charging hybrid, so there's no charging flap. You don't have to worry about plugging into wall boxes or public chargers, but I'll talk about that in the technical section. But yeah, as I say, inoffensive, but not exactly standout wow, is it? Which is pretty much the same as the rear end as well, because as I say, if you covered up that badge, I reckon you could be hard pushed to tell what you were actually looking at. I mean, it could be anything that's been out from a Far East company in the last 20 years. There's no real standout thing that says, that's an MG. Anyway, this is interesting, I think. You know, the roof spoiler here doesn't have the high level brake light integrated into it. It's in the screen. And there's a reason for that, or I think there's a reason for that, which I'll talk about just in a wee while. Rear lights obviously wrap round into the tailgate. I see you obviously get your big chrome MG badge like the front, the badging over that side there, MG3 Hybrid Plus. Reversing camera. Cameras all around the car. That's good, nice bit of tech there. Obligatory parking sensors as well. You get this black sort of fake mesh down at the bottom just to tie it in with the front, and then just your side reflectors down at the side there to give a bit more kind of contouring on the bumper. As I say, not exactly a design classic. I don't think we're going to be talking about the look of this car in 10, 15, 20 years time, but hardly a bad looking car either, is it? Let's see what we think of the Skoda. Now, whereas the MG's design doesn't really have anything to tie into the MG family, the Skoda is the complete opposite. In fact, it's almost in danger of falling into that trap that Audi has of being just sort of like, you know, the same theme on bigger or smaller scales. You know, you've got these lovely headlights that wrap round into the new Skoda grille at the front there. It makes it look very much like the, you know, the bigger Scala, the Octavia, even things like the Enyaq. I think it ties it in well to cars like that, but they just need to be a little bit careful they don't make it look too much the same. You know, when you're looking at it going, oh, is that a Scala, is that a Fabia, what is it, you know? And of course the Fabia has grown as well, because it now sits on the Volkswagen Group's MQB platform, so it has grown in physical size. So whilst it's their smallest Supermini, it's not exactly a small car these days, but that's also a good thing when it comes to practicality. Right. As I say, these nice wraparound headlights. You can have these with the crystalline LEDs as an option on the car, depending which model you go for. And as I say, you've got the black Skoda grille with its nice chrome sort of like ring round it as well, which gives it a bit of class. The nice flying chicken Skoda badge there that nestles in, and again you get these lovely bonnet creases that come down there as well, just to sort of like frame that badge. And oddly enough, Skoda are moving away from using the badge now. You're going to see that in more models where it's just the lettering across the front. I'm not sure that's a good thing, Skoda, but you know, what do I know? Down at the bottom, a little bit of sort of like the black plastic sort of like cooling there. You get a bit of radar sensor mounting in there. Front fog lights down at the front, but no front-facing camera like you get on the MG. There's not as much tech as there is on the MG, which is interesting. But as I say, from the front, a handsome little car. Now inside profile, again, very Skoda, isn't it? You can see there's this very strong character line that runs from the front headlights there, all the way along the shoulder line, right to the back lamps as it curves round the back of the tailgate. Very distinctive, very Skoda. Another one down at the bottom there. And you can see the car has grown in physical size, as I say, with this 4th generation vehicle. But as I say, it's good for practicality. Nice big chunky door handles you can get your hands into like the MG has there. But again, less tech on the car. No cameras mounted in the mirrors like there isn't at the front. But, you know, as I say, maybe that's more to do with MG offering more than Skoda not offering enough. We'll talk about that a bit later. There's different trim levels like you get with the MG. There's a lower down SE Comfort. This is the SEL, which I think is sort of like the equivalent to the Trophy model on the MG3. There's a slightly sportier Monte Carlo car sits above this in the range as well. So, you know, depending, obviously, whatever tickles your pickle will depend on what trim level you go for. But I think this SEL is probably the one that I think is the sweet spot in the range. Let's have a look at the back end now, see what it's like. Now around the back it's very similar to the front in the sense that it's very Skoda-like. You can tell that it's part of the same family as, say, the Scala, the Octavia, the Superb and a lot of other cars. And as I say, they've got to be careful they don't fall into that Audi trap where each car is just sort of like a smaller or larger variation of the same thing. So just be careful, Skoda. You get the chromed lettering across the back, so again, no Skoda badge. But the accent's now on top, integrated into the S rather than above the S as it used to be. This is the new Skoda lettering across. That's what's going to replace the flying chicken badge at the front of the car. Now you're going to see that for the first time in a car that's out this October. It's the new electric small SUV, the L-Rock. Now if you want to get the first details of that car as soon as it goes live, as soon as we're allowed to tell you about it, then you need to be subscribed to the Auto EV channel, my other channel, where we do electric cars. So that's where you'll find all the details about the new L-Rock. But that's going to get that badging across the front rather than the big Skoda logo. So there you go. The lights here, they remind me a little bit of the Kodiaq, as I say, the car that I reviewed a few weeks back, again with that sort of tick, the way they come along and then tick back like that. It's quite nice. Fabia badging there, no reverse camera. Yeah. No reverse camera like you get with the MG, but you do get parking sensors, obviously, they're integrated into the bumper, and then your lower plastic cladding down there. So it's a very neat rear end to the Skoda, and that's where we're going to finish with the design of the two cars. Of the two, I prefer the look of the Skoda. I think it's a much more structured, much more handsome little car. I think it looks a bit more premium in its design, but that's not to say the MG3 is a bad car. I think it's quite a nice looking car, but it's just a bit too generic for my eyes. As I say, it looks like a Hyundai from maybe, I say, 15, 20 years ago, you know, like the little i20 or something like that. There's no real sort of like design language as MG yet. I think they're still trying to find their feet. And I'm a bit disappointed they didn't go for that kind of real sharp, kind of edgy look they've got with the MG4 electric hatchback. And I do like that car, and I just find it odd they've not followed that theme with the 3. But what do I know? I mean, that's my opinion. What's yours? What do you think? Do you prefer the MG over the Skoda? Did you even know about that car? Did you know it was an MG when you first saw it? As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Right, let's discuss the practicality now. So the MG3 has a boot space of 293 litres, which you can extend up to 963 litres by folding the rear bench down. Now I say the rear bench because actually, as you can see, it's not split. You don't get a 60-40 split. And this is part of the thing I was talking about by putting the high-level brake light in the rear screen and not the spoiler. There's part of me that's starting to see a little bit of how they're managing to keep the cost of the car down by just, I'm not saying cutting corners, but you know what I'm saying. They're just not giving you maybe as much of, you're starting to notice little things like, oh, you don't have a split rear seat. Oh, why is that not integrated into the spoiler? Why is it a separate plastic unit hanging from the back window? Anyway, there we go. 293 litres, as I say. It's a relatively decent shape of boot. You know, it's okay in terms of the shape of it as well. You lift up the boot floor. There's a tiny little well in there. You would get, I don't know, a couple of little umbrellas or something like that, or a raincoat or something tucked underneath there. The bumper itself, lifting stuff over, there's a little drop in down into the boot, but nothing massive, you know, nothing you're going to really unduly worry about, unless it was something heavy, you know, like say maybe a wheelchair or a bigger buggy or something like that. Now, I've got my suitcases here. There are 4 suitcases plus my camera bag, so we're going to try and see what the two cars are like, what we can get them into, what we can get into each car. So let's start with a large suitcase. So, right, so it's not going to go that way. Can it go that? It can go that way. Okay, so we pop that. In fact, actually, let me turn that round so the wheels are over on this side. So there's our large suitcase, which can. There we go. There. There's a medium suitcase. Will that go in there? Yep, that will go in there. Let's see if we can get a carry-on in there. No, that's not, and it's not going to go that way because of the parcel shelf. So 2 suitcases. But you get a couple of rucksacks in there. Okay, so that's the space that you've got available to you in terms of measuring it with suitcases. If it's your weekly shop from Tesco's or Sainsbury's, whatever your bags for life, I would imagine you get quite a few in there. And as I say, also in terms of a wheelchair or a pushchair, you know, for children, depending on the size, depending how collapsible it is, it's probably going to be all right for that. But as you can see, you've got a little bit of a drop down into the boot, and therefore a little bit of leftover, but nothing that's going to really put you in any strain, I would suggest. But let's see what the Skoda's like now in comparison. Right, the Fabia next, and you get 380 litres in the Fabia as standard, and if you fold the standard 60-40 rear bench down, that takes total capacity up to 1,190 litres. So significantly bigger than you get in the MG3, which I say is not a bad boot, in fairness. You also have the option of a variable height boot floor with the Fabia, which is not in this particular car, but if you lift up here, there's the spare wheel well. Now, neither car gets a spare wheel, okay? You get the tyre foam and the inflation canister, so do be aware of that. Neither car gets a spare wheel, not even a space saver, as standard. But there you go, a much bigger boot that you get in the Fabia. So again, suitcases, what fits, how does it fit? Right, so we'll start off with the larger of them, and we'll put it, does it go that way? No, it doesn't. Right, so it has to go the same way as the MG. So it goes in there, in the back. There's our medium, which goes in there. We're going to get, are we? Yeah, we are. We're going to get a carry-on in there. We won't get 2 carry-ons in, but we will get a rucksack in there as well. Plus, of course, you can have, you know, maybe a softer bag or some jackets in the back. So you can see it's a physically bigger boot that you get in the Fabia than you do in the MG. But again, look at the sort of, like, you know, the drop in from the sill. You know, you are having to lift stuff over. the sill. It's not horrific, you know, you're going to do it, but just be aware of that, you know, yard drop. That's where you might want to go for that variable height boot floor option, where it just brings it more in line with the actual rear bumper if you're sort of, you know, sliding loads in. So just be aware of that. Plus as well, in the Fabia you can get lots of little bits and pieces, because Skoda are a very practical manufacturer in terms of what they give you. Oh, hang on, I should have done that the other way around. So as well, there's a couple of little hooks in the side of the MG, but you also get them here in the Fabia. But you can have things such as, you know, luggage hammocks, you know, for putting jackets in to hold them up, and you can have divider things that you can buy as accessories to sort of divide it all out, which is slightly better. So again, depending what you're going to use the boot floor for, you might want to consider some of those options, but you get those options at least with Skoda, whereas you don't with MG. But in terms of practicality, yes, it's the MG that wins this test in boot space. Right, let's try the back seats now. So, driver's seat set up for myself, and I'm 5'8". So I'm sitting behind a 5'8" driver in the MG3, and this is quite commodious, I have to say. This is a good size back here. That's all right. I could do a good distance behind myself, you know, somebody my height driving. My wife's a bit taller, she's closer to the 6 foot mark. If she was to slide the seat back a bit, again, it probably wouldn't be cramped. I mean, you could probably feel it touching just the backs of my knees, but I've got good foot room. There's a lot of space down there in the footwell. That's excellent. There's a little bit of a raised transmission tunnel, so 3 across would be, well, you can do it. I mean, it's all right. Neither car has sunroofs. What MG have done is there's a bit in the middle that's lowered, but they're scooped out at the back and scooped out at the front. So actually, there's still a reasonable bit of headroom. Width-wise, it might be the issue, but certainly for 4 people, that's all right. I'm quite impressed with that. That's good. Right, what else have we got back here? Well, we've got pockets on the backs of the front seats, either side. We've got one USB-A charging port there. A little bit in there that might just take a packet of Polar Mints, but probably not. We've got door bins, which will take a water bottle, but that's all. No fold down armrest, so there's no central storage, so it's just limited to the door bins in the back. You do have 3 head restraints across, obviously, and you've got also a 3-point centre belt. The ISOFIX points, you've got to pull down this Velcro flap, which looks a little bit cheap in my opinion, that does, but at least you then have good access into the actual brackets. But yeah, I think there might have been a nicer solution rather than that. But yeah, I'm quite impressed with the back of the MG3. That's pretty good, you know, to be able to sit behind myself, and the seat feels well sculpted out. Good knee room, excellent foot room, good headroom. Yeah, this is all right. Right, same scenario in the Fabia. My driving position. Oh, yeah. Again, same. Look at that, I have to put the headrest up a little bit because it digs into my shoulder blade. Excellent foot room. Your feet go right underneath the seat in the Fabia, the front seat in the Fabia. It feels a little bit tighter on the knee room, that's what I will say, but still enough, you know, behind my driving position. Better headroom. There's better headroom in the back of the Fabia than there is in the MG3, and it doesn't have the sculpting out. You know, it doesn't have the sculpted out roofline that you get in the MG. So it's nicer as standard, it's better as standard. One thing I also will say is light headlining cloth, which makes it feel more spacious inside the back. So that's a real boon, I think, to have this light headliner rather than the black one that you get in the MG. Downside, however, look at the height of that transmission tunnel. You're going to have to, can you get 3 across? Well, you could, but again, they're going to, yeah, see, look, that's where it's tighter there. And the backrest is pushing you forward a little bit more. So you are sitting, it's not as comfortable, and there's no, you know, in terms of the width, it's going to be a real struggle with 3 across the back. So, but for 2, no problem at all. And as I say, that's actually very comfortable indeed. And again, like the MG, the backrests of the seat are sculpted out, so you do have a really nice bit of space. Also, the squabs feel that little bit longer. You can just see they're curved out a bit there, so there's a bit more support underneath the backs of your knees. However, there's no USB connectivity in the back of the Fabia. Look at that. There isn't, is there? I'm not missing it. It's not somewhere else, somewhere stupid, is it? No, there's nothing there. No, it's not in the seats. No, there's nothing there. So it's lacking that, but a bit more storage. You get 2 pockets in the back there, so a bigger one there and a smaller one for, say, like a mobile phone. And the door bins feel bigger as well, but again, no centre armrest on the Fabia, but Isofix points, much easier to find. They're just these nice big open holes, a bit neater solution there. So in terms of rear seat accommodation, they're pretty much even Stevens if it's 4 that you're taking, but there's no doubt about it, the MG3 is a little bit bigger if you need that 5th space, if you need that centre person with its lower transmission tunnel. It just feels that little bit wider here, but both are amply good. Right, let's start with the MG. And good and bad points in here, as there is with most cars. Let's talk about the driving environment first. So what we have here is a 7-inch display, which you look through this slightly odd quartic steering wheel to see, and it's split into 3 different sections. So you've got your driver assistance things on the left, you've got your speed and range, because obviously it doesn't give you a fuel gauge as such, it tells you your distance to go before you run out of petrol, rather than a fuel gauge. And then your speed traffic signs, I'll start again, speed limit traffic sign recognition at the top, and then your actual speedo in the centre, which is a numerical number. On the right hand side, you've got a small thing that you can choose what it shows. You can choose what it tells to show you, so you can have things such as your, at the moment it's telling me to press the brake pedal to move off, but you can tell you things like, you know, your tire pressure monitoring. You can have a power meter there, like a rev counter, but it's in kilowatts. You can have your next service interval. You can also have a trip computer as well. You can have it to show your energy flow between the battery and the engine as well, and you know, different trip meters. So that's there. It's quite a busy little screen, that. There's a lot of information in it. It's good that it has it all there, I will say that, but it is quite busy. You've also got a little light down in here that says either EV or HEV when you're driving, so to tell you whether you're in pure electric mode or whether you're in hybrid mode. So that'll come up. There's also a tiny little number there. Thank God I got my new glasses, because I can just see that. That's your brake regen level. So there's brake regen on the car, but I'll talk about that when we're driving it. But it is tiny, and then there's just a little bit there. So as I say, there's a lot of information in that little space. And the other downside is the steering wheel doesn't adjust for reach, it only adjusts for height. So if you're in a certain position, as you pull it down, it's cutting off the top of the screen. So just be aware of that, okay? The wheel itself, I have to say I'm not a fan. I've never really been a fan of this wheel on MG. Where I hold the wheel, you know, at 9:15, what I find is it's quite uncomfortable. I also find these bits of plastic here just dig into the heel of my hands, and it's very easy just to knock one of the little joysticks changing things. I changed the radio station earlier without thinking about it as I moved my hand on the wheel, so just be aware of that. And then you've got 6 buttons on it, so you've got your telephone, you're changing your screen there, and 1 favourite button, I'll talk about that in a second, voice control, steering, your lane keep assist button there, oh shush, and then another favourite button there, and then this one here is your cruise control button, because you get cruise control on the car. Well equipped to standard. As I mentioned, the cameras outside, you get heated seats in the front, just 1 stage, so they're either on or off, but they've still got them. Heated seats, heated steering wheel, that's standard on the car. These are optionals, you can have them on the Fabia, but they're options. So it is well equipped as standard, okay? Then we jump across to this screen here, this 10.25-inch infotainment screen, which is better than MG's of old, you know, previous generation MG5, MGZS, that type of thing, but it's still not perfect. There's 2 home screens. You've either got this one here with your App Connect, climate control, radio, navigation, or if you swipe across to the left, there's more tiles that are in there. You've also got shortcut buttons down the side there as well, okay? While I'm here, let me just show you your 360-degree camera. You know, I mean, it's pretty good, isn't it? I mean, look at that, on a little Supermini. And this is standard. I mean, that's superb. That was the thing of luxury cars years ago, you know? You can't complain at the standard equipment level on it. You know, it's obviously got an inbuilt navigation system as well. You do get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but it's wired, it's not wireless. But you also get Bluetooth and Bluetooth music streaming as well. So there you go. The screen itself, it's all right, but other people do it better. There's no doubt about it. So, you know, some of the graphics, it is a tiny bit. You've got to press it a couple of times you know, maybe sometimes to make it actually take notice of what you're doing. The other bugbear I've got a little bit is the safety systems. You've really, again, MG aren't alone in this. You've really got to dive into the screens to turn stuff off. So if you go into, so if let's say I'm on that home screen there, for instance, and I want to turn off the speed limit warning, I go into car settings, MG pilot, intelligent overspeed alert. So you turn it on or off there. But look, there's all that stuff that you have to go through if you want to change anything. Lane keep assist, blind spot detection, rear driving assist, driver fatigue monitor. You know, it's 2 or 3 steps into the screen. Now, you can assign it to one of these little star buttons. So if there's something you do a lot of that you want to turn, you can change it to that. So it's not all is not lost, but again, it just feels that there's just an awful lot in there. And again, because the screen's not quite as sharp and quite quick as other ones are, that I feel lets it down a wee bit, in fairness. I've got a big bugbear about all these safety systems on cars. Rather than make manufacturers spend more money putting them in, why don't we spend more money and train drivers properly to obey speed limits? And to actually just, you know, driving should be a privilege, not a right. So why don't we just spend the money training drivers better, rather than getting lazy and relying on the car to do it? But that's my beef. There we go. Right, what else have we got? Moving down, we've got physical buttons here. The climate control, you've got a button here if you press it, but it's then controlled from the screen. So your temperature's controlled from here, and it's just a single zone, yeah? So that's there, but you've got a button to take you straight to it, in fairness. And there's your heated seats and heated steering wheel in there. So it's just 2 stages to get into that one, and then your airflow direction there. You've got full maximum defrost button, heated rear screen, home button, and then volume control for the radio. These buttons are okay. The plastic feels a little bit cheap, but you know, again, there are areas of the cabin that, again, as I was saying about the cost-cutting areas, like we're talking about in the back there, that feel where you can see where they've made those sacrifices to keep the price down. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. You know, it's all right, this top of this dashboard, but this car already, I can see it's quite scratched up here because it's got quite a hard plastic. Something's been mounted up there and it's scratched it already. But then you move further down, you get this nice little kind of almost tartan strip through the middle of it, and then this soft touch leatherette here with the orange stitch in it. It's the same with the seats, you know, the leatherette down the side of the seat. It's all right, but in fairness, it might have been quite nice if it had just been all cloth, you know, because the cloth itself is quite nice with this diamond quilt in it. The seats are okay. I don't mind the seats. You sit quite high in it, in the car, but they've got a reasonable shoulder support. They wrap around your shoulder quite nicely. They're not quite as nice on the squab as the Fabias. They're a little bit short on the squab for me, but you know, they're okay. I think most people find it okay. But again, the controls down the side for like lifting them up and that, it feels a bit loose. It's not even doing anything at the moment. It just feels a bit loose in your hand, and there's a bit of a sharp edge to it. So again, it's little areas like that you can just start to see, oh, that's a bit cheap feeling. But then there's other bits that are okay, you know. 2 cup holders, no wireless charging pad, but there is a space in there for your mobile. Now, you can also see it's an automatic gearbox that comes with the MG3 as standard. We'll talk about the technical bits and when we go to the technical section. But it's you obviously don't have a gear stick. There's no option to have a manual. It's auto only. Electronic park brake, auto hold, and then there's your mode button, because you have 3 driving modes in the car. Although oddly, you can't. It's not got an EV only mode. It's just normal, eco, and sport. There we go. You've got, what have I done there? I'll press brake. You've got a lift up armrest here. This is a bit that I'm a bit thinking, this sliding tray here just feels cheap as you like. In fact, it actually came off in my hand the other day. Oh, it's done it again. Look at that. And then to get it back in, and you just know over time that's going to wear and it's just going to slide backwards and forwards as you accelerate and decelerate. That feels really cheap in my view. And then you've got a little bits of storage in there, which you can move, you know, the little divider to give you bigger or smaller bits of storage depending how you want it. But you could have done just without that cover. I'd remove that and just throw it away because it's going to end up getting broken anyway. But there's storage in there for some Mars bars and things like that. But again, there's no, it's all shiny plastic on the bottom of it. as it is in the door bins as well. You know, they're not lined or anything. They feel like a bit sharp on the edges. So, right, I'm going to stop there because I could waffle on for hours. What have we got? Well, we've got a really well-equipped car, lots of safety tech, comfortable. You know, the seat position is good, apart from the steering wheel. I don't like the steering wheel, and it doesn't adjust. As I say, only adjusts for height. There's no reach adjustment on it. A mixture of materials, some good, like you get here in that little strip, that's it. Some not so good. Cheap dash there, and then the shinier plastics and cheaper plastics down here. The seats feel good. The tech is there. You've got a relatively usable screen there, but other people do it a lot better. That's all right, but very busy. So on the whole, it's a good interior, not a great one, if that makes sense. Right, Skoda now, and immediately there's a very different feel to the car. You sit more in the Skoda rather than on it like you do in the MG. So the seats themselves, whilst they look a little bit featureless and flat, they've got a really nice feel to them. There's a bit more length in the squab, they're a bit more curved round there's a bit more side support down the side of my legs. Similar lateral support down my sides, and again a good wraparound bit at the shoulders there just to support my shoulders. So they are very, very good. However, look at this, reach and rake adjustment on the steering wheel. Oh, thank you, Skoda. The wheel's nicer to hold as well, although again, I mean, I've driven a lot of Skodas recently, and I do find the wheels are starting to really get quite big. Could do with being a touch smaller, I think, but it's much nicer to hold than the MGs. It's pleasingly round, two-spoke design, nice, like the MG, nice physical buttons, not too many there, but they've got these lovely little thumb wheels for adjusting volume for your radio there, and then also for adjusting the depth of the map that's on there. And you can so much adjustment on this dashboard, which I'm just about to talk to you about. I really do like this dashboard. So there we go. Right, so let's jump onto that dashboard. What do we have? Well, we have Skoda's virtual cockpit standard. Look at this. This feels posh. I mean, really properly posh. You can adjust what you see here. So with these two buttons here, I can have full map display there. I can then go into my assistant systems. How do I do that? There we go there. So I can just show my assist, you know, so like the MG had it over on the left, I've got it full and square and center. Where else have we got? We've got a range, and you can have a real simple design where you just got speed and range, that's it. Or what you can also do is have dials, rev counter, speed in the middle. Or we can go back to having two dials, rev counter and speedo, with a digital readout as well. Or we can go back to having, where's the map one? Where was the map? Oh, here we go. Driving data, vehicle status, telephone, audio. You can have the audio system up there. Navigation. So much that you can do. And when you've got the map on there as well, you know, that then becomes zooming in and zooming out of the map. Or you can vary it to have a smaller map with more information at the sides. Or you can again take it back to have the dials there with a map in the middle. That is phenomenally good. Brilliant. I love this. And then there you've got your fuel gauge readout on the right and then temperature gauge on the left. So much nicer and feels much classier than you get in the MG. Really does. Then there's this screen here. This, I think, is 9-inch infotainment screen. That's 10.25 inch. This is 9-inch here. Wireless Apple CarPlay. You also get Android Auto with it as well. And just look at the graphics on it. They're just really crisp and clear. Skoda really do this well on all their models. You've got shortcut buttons down either side there. So you can go into your menu, you can go straight to your media there. You can go straight to your phone. Inbuilt navigation, which is there. Car settings, you know, which is there. You know, and again, you can just, you know, move to where you want to, you know, various different things into your settings. You know, your ESC opening and closing to change all your bits and pieces there. Look at that. Home button at the top, radio, volume is touch sensitive, and then you can switch on and off. Okay. Oh,
what would you like?
I don't want to do anything. Shush. So yeah, look at that. However, again, like the MG, you've got to go into quite a few menus before you start. See? Active speed warning. No, turn it off. Don't want that. and of course the default on when you go on. So again, not unlike the MG, you've still got to go through lane keep assist, turn that off, there you go. All of these things, you know, you've got to go into screens to turn it all off. And quite a few screens, if you're on, I don't know, you listen to the radio, you've got the navigation up. So you've got to go to this home one, driver assist, then go through the different bits. So it's not perfect, but what I am saying is the quality of the screen and the activation of it is a generation ahead of the MGs. That's where MG will get to, in fairness to them, but Skoda's already there. Right, the materials. Got to mention the materials because again, everything feels quality. Harder plastic still on the top, don't get me wrong, it's not that squidgy plastic that would be nice, you know, so you do get slightly harder plastics at the top there, but then you've got this material running down here. I think this is what they got. Is it the lounge or the loft interior that gets on the Fabia? I don't know. Anyway, that's there, that's nice material, so the same seat material, and then the lower plastics here, but they feel so much nicer to the touch than the MGs, and God is it solid. Absolutely, you feel this is going to last for. Skoda's so far ahead, I think, in terms of its build quality in the Volkswagen group. I think it's surpassing Audi now. I really do. I think Skoda have got it, absolutely. They are the best in the Volkswagen group for build quality as far as I'm concerned. They're superb, if you'll pardon that pun. Physical climate controls. So you don't need to go into the screen to adjust the climate. So look, dual zone as well. So, you know, and then you get a little readout down here. Fan speed. You just touch the centre of that one for auto, recirculation, menu, fan speed, heated rear screen, maximum defrost. Nice, easy when you're driving, falls nicely to hand, just there. Brilliant. So that's excellent. Oh, what am I doing? I've still got the volume on the radio. Sorry. Get a copyright strike for that. Manual gearbox. Now, depending obviously on what you want, you can have the Fabia with an automatic. You can have it with the 7-speed DSG gearbox as well, but obviously you've got to pay for that. But in terms of the pricing of the two cars, I decided to go for the manual car because, and I'll talk about that when we're driving it, but I do like the manual gearbox that Skoda fit on this car. It's a really nice little gearbox. However, what I will say is this, there's no storage. There's no cup holder. Well, there is two cup holders here, but first of all, it will not take my coffee cup like the MGs does, and my water bottle, so that's got to fit in the door, and it does fit in the door in fairness, but my water bottle has to sit there and it doesn't go all the way down. And look, you know, that's fouling my arm as I'm moving the gear stick. First world problem, I understand, but I do carry a water bottle in the car with me, so I've either got to jam it, in fact I can't get both of them in the door bin, so it has to sit there, and if you lift that up, you can't put it there because then it fills that, so that's not ideal. That needs to be better thought out. There is storage in there, and it's carpet lined at the bottom. Thanks, Skoda. That's a good idea. You've also got little cables that you get with it for connectivity. So depending obviously on what you need. So if you're connecting your Android, because I think Android Auto is wired, but you've got a connection there. Then you get two USB-C ports down in there. You've also got neat little things down there that I really like, and again, it's like Skoda do. Pen holder. You know, a clip there for, you know, putting a parking pass in or for a parking ticket in. The little cubby here has got, you know, dimpled rubber lining so things don't slide around. I put my wallet there, it doesn't slide around. It's just little thoughtful things like that I really like Skoda for. They do really, really well. And there's a couple of other things that I'm going to show you when I get out of the car, which I also like as well. Sunglasses holder, and it's rubber on the bottom, it's rubber lined, you know, so again the glasses don't run around. It just feels a bit more quality. Okay, you do still have some shiny back plastic up on the vents there and at the side of the, you know, the binnacles, so it's not, you know, around here, and it is starting to show its age on this car. It's done 2,500 miles, you know, and it's starting to look a bit scratched and dusty, so it's not perfect, but you do get a much better quality. There's no doubt about it overall in here, and as I say, I prefer the driving position. It's not bad in the MG, it's good in the MG. Skoda's better. Prefer the steering wheel, love the dash, that's much better. The seats I personally find just a little bit better, but the MGs are still very good, and I like the physical controls that you're just fall easily to hand. Storage isn't as good as you get in the MG, and also in terms of the standard equipment wise, you've got to pay a bit more to bring it up to the MG's standard equipment tally. But you do have that option if you do want them, things like heated seats, heated steering wheel, you can have it on the Fabia, but you do have to pay more for it. But in terms of just the overall design, the quality, the functionality, the Skoda's better, but the MG's better equipped. And that's how we'll leave that. You know those things I was saying about Skoda, how they've got another little surprise features? Umbrella, the driver's door, standard. Look at that. And also, fuel filler cap, ice scraper for your windows. And on the corners of it, tire depth measurement gauge. Well done, Skoda. I really like that kind of thought that goes into your cars. Right, let's get technical now and look at the engine, shall we? Start with the MG, because this is really interesting, I think, this car. So it's a hybrid, but it's not a plug-in hybrid. You don't have to charge it up in terms of using wall boxes or public chargers or anything like that. So it's a self-charging hybrid, if you use that vernacular. And what you have here is a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder engine plus an electric motor that draws its power from a battery, a small battery. Now it's 1.8 kilowatt hours, but actually its usable capacity is just under 1 kilowatt hours. And that's important, which I'll discuss when we're out driving. But all of that combined produces 194 PS. I mean, that's hot hatch territory almost. But it's not quite as clear cut. And it also delivers its power through a 3-speed auto, which makes you think, 3-speed auto? When was the last time we had a 3-speed auto? It does work, and there's a reason for it, but that's for when we're out driving it. Okay, so 194 PS being delivered to the front wheels through a 3-speed auto. The battery, as I say, itself is just under 1 kilowatt hours in capacity, of usable capacity. You don't need to charge it up, however. As I say, it charges via the engine itself, so there's no plug-ins or anything like that to worry about. Your official fuel consumption figures are 64.2 miles to the gallon on a combined cycle, and in terms of CO2 emissions, then you're looking at 100 grams per kilometre when it comes to that, so pretty good. The Skoda, by comparison, is much more conventional. Apart from the fact the bonnet release is on the wrong side. Come on, Skoda, we drive on the right, the correct side. Sort that out. Right, what are we looking at? Well, we're looking at a 1 litre 3-cylinder turbocharged TSI unit producing 115 PS. You can get it with a lower powered version of that engine as well if you do want that, or you can also jump up to a 1.5 litre TSI unit that produces 150 PS. Now that 1.5 litre unit and this one, 115, you can also have with a DSG gearbox if you prefer your Fabia to have 2 pedals rather than 3, which in fairness with a 1.5 probably brings it closer in power to the MG3, but in terms of price point and fuel economy wise, I think this one is the one that stands more comparison. Fuel economy wise, what are we looking at? Well, we're looking at around about 54 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle, so a little bit less than you get with the MG, but bear in mind it's purely petrol, there's no hybrid system in here. And in terms of its emissions, 124 grams per kilometre as opposed to the 100 grams per kilometre you get with the MG3. Now, like I said, in the technical side of things, the power the MG produces when, you know, the engine and the motor's all taken into account is a lot. You know, it's like hot hatch, or used to be hot hatch territory, over 190 PS. But yet it doesn't translate into a hot hatch performance figure, if that makes sense. So it's 0 to 60 time is 8 seconds. So it's quick, it is quick, but it never really feels that quick. It doesn't feel as quick as the numbers might suggest. It feels like a normal, you know, sort of just decently warm, sort of like hatchback, if that makes sense. Right, let's talk about the way the hybrid system works a little bit. So it's quite clever, as I say. You don't plug the car in, so it is a self-charging hybrid. In that sense. So in terms of the way the engine works with the hybrid system, what you tend to find is you've got 2 little lights down in the dashboard, down in here. It'll either say EV or HEV, so electric vehicle or hybrid electric vehicle. If it's EV, then it's purely running on the motor itself. So there's enough power in the battery. Quite a small battery, as I say, although it's MG say it's 1.9 something kilowatt hours, its usable capacity is actually under 1 kilowatt hours. And the other thing is there's no EV mode, so you can't drive it purely on, you know, you can't save the power in the battery and press a button and it drives in electric power only like a lot of plug-in hybrids do. It doesn't do that. So you don't do anything, the car sorts itself all out, okay? There's no buttons for you to press as a driver, the car will sort itself out. At the moment it's saying it's an HEV, so it's got the engine working in tandem with the motor. So what it will be doing here is it's putting, the engine is providing power to the battery, which is then providing that power to the motor, which is driving the wheels. So it's working as a series hybrid, in other words, okay? When you put your foot down towards the carpet, what you tend to find is when the engine wakes up and does all that kind of stuff, it's quite loud. You see what I mean? It's quite a loud engine. It makes itself known to you quite a bit. Now, what, you know, that 3-speed auto as well, as I say, it's odd having a car with a 3-speed auto, but MG say that's the efficient way for it all to work together. And on the whole it does. On the whole it does. Normally when you start the car up, if it's been running for a little while, you will start off in EV mode. It will just come up EV and it will pull away silently, and only then when you sort of like really need it, you'll find the engine will kick in, and as I say, will start to sort of like, you know, help everything along. If you come off the throttle, you may find that it flicks back to EV mode, because it's then using, what it's doing is it's using its energy recuperation, which you get brake regeneration in the car, which is, I think, quite odd for a hybrid model, especially in this class of car. You don't tend to find brake regen at this price point. So, you know, I mean, that is good, you know, it's very good. And you can adjust that through levels 1, 2 and 3, depending on what suits you best. There's a mode button down here. As I say, you can have sport mode, where everything just, you know, starts to happen a bit more. But as I say, it's not a particularly, I mean, it's okay. I've driven cars with worse engines, but there's nothing to be gained from it, is what I'm trying to suggest. So, and then you go to eco mode, that just dulls everything down. So normal mode is where you find everything's just at that baseline and it just works. And that's where 99% of people, I think, will leave it and never bother with that. The steering, it's a bit lifeless, if I'm being honest about it. It's all right, but you know, you go into a bend with it and you turn the wheel. As I say, the wheel's not particularly comfortable to hold. For me, I don't find it a particularly comfortable wheel to hold. Okay, you may be different. I don't think it's that particularly nice to hold. I don't particularly get on. I haven't done the MG4s, in fairness, but as I say, that's for another time. If you go into a bend like here and you turn, you know the car's turning because obviously it is physically moving, but you don't get any feedback from the wheel that that's actually happening. So the steering's a little bit vague, okay? So there's no real pleasure to be had in sort of like hustling it down, you know, sort of like any kind of little B-road. You get some Superminis that, you know, the Fiesta that we've been talking about, you know, is renowned for being a great car to drive. This isn't in that class. You know, it's all right, it steers, it moves the car, but that's it. Don't expect a lot of communication back from the steering with it. And in terms of the other controls, so the throttle and the pedal, you know, there's not a big height to move between the throttle to the pedal, which is good, but also there's not a huge amount of feedback from either of them either. There's a nice weight behind them, that's what I will say. You know, you get sort of like some electrified drivetrains. I'll stop short of saying electric cars, but electrified drivetrains where, you know, it's almost a switch, it's on and it's off type of thing. There is a deftness required with the MG for the throttle pedal, and the same with the brake. You've got to do it. The car won't do it for you, obviously, unless you've got the brake regen on, of course. But what I'm trying to say is it likes you to do it. So there is that nice interaction from there. But as I say, there's no real joy to be had with the car. You know, there's no real pleasure to be had with it. It is a car being just that, a car. It is a form of transport from that point of view. It is a very comfortable form of transport. That's what I will say about it. The seats are really nice. As I said earlier, I do like the seats in the car. You know, there's just enough support in them. You know, there's no lumbar support or anything like that. There's just enough support in them. If you're just tootling around, you know, sort of like going to the shops and, you know, sort of like, you know, long journey and stuff like that, you're not going to really complain about it. I'd like to see more adjustment in the steering wheel, obviously, but that's what it is. So from that point of view, you know, the car does the job. The suspension. Now I'm going down this road here. This is one of my roads I take it down just to always judge what the suspension is like on these cars. It's not uncomfortable, okay? So if I drive down here and it's a bit rutted, yeah, there you go, you see, you can feel it, you know it's all there, you know it's all happening, but it's not uncomfortable, it's just there's a lot of chatter from underneath the car. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of suspension and mechanical noise. So you know that you are going down a rough road. It's not isolating you from that. You know that the road is rough, but to say it's not unduly comfortable in that sense. So there is that, okay? So what we have, in summary, is a very nice little car. It drives well. It's not outstanding, it's not sparkling to drive. There are a lot of other Superminis out there that are more enjoyable to pilot down a road, but it is a world away from what the old MG3 was like and what you might think of a budget car, dare I suggest. You know, it's not a car that you know, as I say, there are certain areas where you look around the cabin, you know, and I say the lack of split rear seat, that type of thing, we say, I can see where they've saved money there. You can't say that about the way the car drives. No, it's not the best engine that's out there, but it's far from the worst. The hybrid system, when it's all working and in tandem and all the rest of it, you know, it does give you a relatively nice, when it does flick it into EV mode and then transitions back to the engine's running, it is fairly imperceptible as long as you're on a light throttle. It's only when you mash the throttle to the carpet that do you feel that the car is just being a little bit too vocal, a little bit too loud, and therefore not particularly enjoyable in that sense. So if you back it all off and you're just using the car, as I say, round locally or doing, you know, little bits and pieces round about where you live or whatever, so it's just gone to EV mode there. It's not like the engine just went boom, 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 and shut down. You didn't really know, and I guarantee you when these lights change and I pull away again, it will be a very imperceptible thing when the engine kicks back in. So what I'm trying to say is, it's a very good car. It's not a great one. Now the Fabia, less powerful than the MG3 at 116 PS. I think I said 115 before, but it's 116 PS. It's what the Fabia has. But you know what? Although it's, you know, much less powerful, it doesn't feel it. It genuinely doesn't feel it in the day-to-day driving. As I say, that's a combination of the MG not feeling as quick as its power suggests, and this feeling quite sprightly for the power that it has, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think this is actually quite a nice little car, and in terms of its performance, it's got enough. And that's why I'm saying I think this engine could be, this power level, this trim level, and all the rest of it, this could be the sweet spot in the Fabia range, I think. I like this. This is a good car. Now, it's helped in part by a really nice 6-speed manual gearbox. And you know what? I was trying to think there of the last time I drove a manual press car. I genuinely can't recall it. I really can't, the last time I drove a manual gearbox in a press car. I have a manual gearbox. I have a manual car myself. My Mini's manual, but I'm just trying to think the last time I drove a manual press car. Can't recall. So it's nice to have. The gear shift, really nice. It's a really nice, got a lovely weight behind it. It's got a really nice spring behind it. So, you know, you're in something like fifth, you just dip the clutch, pull it back, and it springs back to centre, and then another pull back gets you back into fourth. You never really miss a gear with it, and it's got just a nice weight between all the ratios, and they're well judged ratios as well. You know, it really doesn't feel like it's ever being underpowered, or, you know, or sixth is, you know, here we are on a 40 limit, we're driving along here in sixth gear, put my foot down, no shake, I mean, it doesn't take off like a scalded cat, but there's no shake, no shudder from it. It just makes progress eventually. So that's good. I like that. Right. The driving position is exceptional. You sit lower in the car than you do in the MG. You much more sit in it rather than on it. The MG, you sit more upright, and you've got much more vision around it, certainly. But in terms of the actual sort of like the driving position in the Fabia, it's a really low slung car, and it makes the car feel a little bit bigger than it actually is. you do get the impression that it's a bigger size of car than it actually is. And it's not, because it's really easy to place on the road as well. The engine, 1 litre turbocharged 3-cylinder, so of course it's a downsized engine, obviously. And it does make itself known, but it's a pleasant little thrum. I like 3-cylinder engines, they're quite nice. It never feels like it's actually out of its comfort zone and when you accelerate, and nor does it feel underpowered. I mean, I'd stay away from the red line too much, but you know, as I say, it's a nice little car. It has a nice little power plant in it. It just feels good. And the relationship with the brakes, the brake pedal, the throttle pedal and the clutch, it's a really nice. You sit well in the car. The steering wheel's a lot more comfortable to hold. Slightly big, but Skoda seem to be going that way for some reason. I don't know why. I could do with it being just a little bit smaller, but you know, it's far more comfortable to hold than the MGs. It's a little bit more road noise, but less suspension noise. So the refinement is on a par, but the suspension that creates the noise in the MG is quite quiet in the Skoda. But I would suggest there's a tiny little bit more tyre noise you get in the Fabia than you do in the MG3. So maybe that's a wee trade-off there that you need to think about. But at light running, you know, because of that, you know, as long as you're not, at any speed in terms of the road itself, then it is a quieter car, because obviously you're not generating as much road noise, if that makes sense at all. The steering's quite light. It's less vague than the MGs, but it is quite light. Now that's obviously good from the point of view of town driving. You know, so for negotiating, your local Tesco's or Sainsbury's car parks, or for, parking outside the school or driving it to your office or the station or whatever, it's quite a light steering. So that's quite good about it. I do quite like that. That's nice. But turning is okay. It doesn't really weight up at speed. So there is, again, maybe a little bit of a vagueness there that I labelled it the MG as well. So again, it's not a car you're going to hustle down a back road for the fun of it, but if you did, it's probably a little bit more enjoyable than the MG from that point of view. And I say, certainly maybe that's got something to do with the manual box in the car, I don't know. But the relationship as a driver that you have with all the main controls in the car is really good. As I say, everything falls nicely to hand. Everything feels really easy to use. I say the clutch is light enough, it engages gears well, there's a nice response. When you downshift, you've got a nice response back from the accelerator pedal. Initially, the brakes feel quite sharp. So when you first get in the car and you touch the brakes, they are quite sharp. You just got to watch that. That takes a bit of getting used to. The initial bite on the pedal is right at the top. So when you push on the brake pedal, you've got an initial bite. You've got to watch that you don't over brake almost. You indicate there. So yeah, certainly to drive, I would suggest the Fabia is the nicer of the two. There's not a massive amount in it. I think we need to make sure that we are giving the MG the credit that it deserves, because it is a really nice little car to drive, and as I say, it's way ahead of the old MG3. It's a night and day difference in terms of that. But in terms of what car is, if you're asking me to say, right, this is the car you're going to drive for the next 3 years of your life, Brian, this is the car you're going to own for the next 3 years, I would feel happier in the Skoda than I would in the MG. Last bit I'm just going to talk about now is obviously down the same road that I've been driving the MG down. So this is this lumpy, bumpy road down here, and let's just see how it gets on with this in terms of ride quality. Yeah, there's certainly less. It's certainly less jarring than it is in the MG. There's less noise coming up through the bottom of the car. There's less suspension noise. It's a bit more isolated from it. So yeah, in terms of the two to drive, as good as the MG is, Skoda's better. Right, in terms of pricing, let's start with the MG3. Now, apologies about the iPad, it's just I'm getting old and I can't remember numbers like I used to be able to, okay? So there's two models in the MG3 range, both of which have this exact same drivetrain, okay? So it's down to equipment levels, that's what it is. So you start off with the SE model, and that kicks the range off at £18,495, okay? And in terms of equipment, it's probably not far off the equipment level you get with the Fabia SEL, which I'll go on to in a second. So you still get things such as Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, wired in fairness, Bluetooth, navigation, remote central locking, you get the iSmart app for your mobile as well, and alloy wheels, okay? Then you move up to this trophy model, which obviously increases the amount of equipment level that you get on the car, and that gives you things such as the heated front seats, heated steering wheel, blind spot warning, the 360-degree cameras, the leatherette kind of style, the two-tone trim on the seats, and that car, which this one is, with the option of metallic paint, comes in at £21,040, okay? So pretty good value for money, I think, in terms of that. Right, the Fabia range. So that range starts at just under £20,000. It's 19 and a bit, I think it's 19.7 something, and that's for an SE Comfort, but that gets you the less powerful 80 PS engine, okay? You would need to find £22,465 with this SEL model with this 115 PS engine that's in this one, okay? But as tested, again, just with the only option of metallic paint, is £23,125. Okay, but to bring this into line with the specification of that, you need to add on a couple of the option packs, so that would widen the gulf a little bit further. But bear in mind what I will say in terms of pricing and overall ownership costs. In terms of residual values, the Fabia will probably perform better than the MG3 over an ownership period. So whilst you're paying more up front in terms of what you get back at the end, the Fabia is probably the better performing car when it comes to depreciation. So you just need to balance that bit out. Right, both cars need servicing annually, 10,000 miles on the 10,000 miles on the Fabia, but up to 15,000 miles on the MG3. The Fabia only gets a 3-year warranty as standard, naughty Skoda, but you do get 7 years worth of cover on the MG3. So as I say, in terms of overall running costs, the MG3 is cheaper to buy, better equipped, better warranty, and dare I suggest slightly longer servicing intervals if you're doing it on mileage. Although the Fabia, whilst it's more expensive up front with less of a warranty, is probably better when it comes to holding on to its value over a longer term ownership proposition. So there you go. I'm also holding on to the iPad when we're going to talk about competition, because as I said, Ford's decision to sort of like do away with the Fiesta, I think, is almost madness, bordering on madness, because everybody makes these Superminis and there's loads of them and they're all good. Nobody makes a bad car these days, it just depends what you like. So I need to have this here with this list of cars that I've been looking at when I was looking at the competition for this car. Right. We'll talk about the Fiesta going. The biggest competition that Ford had with the Fiesta was, of course, the Vauxhall Corsa. That's a great little car, and it's still one of the biggest selling cars in the UK when you look at the top 10 sales charts. It's a massive sell, and it's a really important car for Vauxhall. Plus, you can also have the Corsa in an electric form as well. Now, if you want to see a review of an electric Corsa, I'll start that again. If you want to see a review of the electric Corsa, then you can head over to my other channel, Auto EV, where I've done a full review of it there. There are better small electric cars out there, let's just say that. But the Corsa itself is a good little car, so you've got to consider that. There's also its cousin, because Vauxhall's part of Stellantis Group now, and that incorporates Peugeot, which has the 208. So again, the 208, you can have that with, you know, internal combustion or electric, and that's a really good little car. And in terms of its interior design and quality and stuff, it's not far off the Fabia, and it's much nicer in terms of its design than the MG. So there's the 2.8. There's obviously also Citroen within the Stellantis group, and it's got the new C3 coming out, which is also going to be available as the EC3, the electric version of that. And Citroen have been a real champion of making cars at a price point where people find them quite affordable. So that's one to consider too. Right, staying in France, Renault, the Clio. Obviously, the Clio's been around for generations now, and it's a brilliant car. Really sorry, big airliner going over because we're not far from Heathrow, so apologies on that. So there's a Clio, you've got to think about. And again, it's also available with hybrid drivetrain, so that's an interesting little car to think about. And of course, Renault have a sister brand with Dacia, and they've got the Sandero, which again, when you talk about sales numbers, that's been one of the biggest selling cars in Europe. So that's a really popular car, so think about that. And of course, Dacia is a real price conscious brand. I don't want to say budget, because they're not anything but budget, but they're very price conscious. And what I like about Dacia, much like Skoda, they really design their cars with people in mind, with families, what people need, what they want. So that's a car to think about. Of course, we talk about the Fabia, we've also got to talk about its sister brand, Volkswagen, the Polo. The Polo is still a massively popular car, and why not? So in terms of quality, in terms of reliability, in terms of, you know, build and all the rest of it, and kind of almost feeling a bit more prestigious, you've got the Polo to consider as well. Okay, let's, as well, I forgot as well, Seat, the Ibiza. Seat's still a brand. We do forget about them at times, but the Seat Ibiza, similar to the Fabia and the Polo. Great car. So there's that. Right, let's jump across now to Japan. What competition do we have from there? Well, of course, you've got Toyota Yaris, and that's another car that brings hybridization into the Supermini class. So think about that as well, the Toyota Yaris. And it also has a little badge engineered cousin in Mazda with the Mazda 2. So it does, Mazda do two versions of the Mazda 2. Its own one, and of course a badge engineered version of the Yaris, which it gives a hybrid drivetrain to. So that's a thought as well. And of course there's the Honda Jazz, the evergreen Jazz, a bit like the Fabia, been on the go for years. Really popular car. People that buy Honda Jazzes are very brand loyal as well. So the Jazz is a car to consider as well. We've also talked about hybrids a lot here. Who else does it? Suzuki, the little Swift. Really fun little car. I haven't driven the new Swift yet, but I've driven lots of the old ones, and they're great little cars. So consider those too. And of course there's Hyundai with the i20 as well. So that's another car to consider. Whew. In other words, there's an awful lot of Superminis out there to choose from, not just these two. So I do think that Ford might regret killing off that Fiesta quite as quickly as they did. There's no doubt about it, the MG3 is a much better car than its predecessor ever was. It offers incredibly good value for money. It offers a brilliant warranty package, and of course that hybrid drivetrain is going to bring running costs right down. It's also quite nice to drive. There's a good little car in here. There's far from being sort of like an also-ran in the class. It's a real class contender, I think. However, when we're talking about cars that are better to drive, there's no doubt in my mind the Fabia is that. It is a better car to drive. I think it's a nicer car to look at. I think the interior is a nicer place to spend time in. And I think as well, with better residual values that Skoda have shown us over the years, the overall sort of like gap when it comes down to overall whole life costs isn't going to be the big gap that their initial cost prices seem to be at first. So in my book, it's the Skoda that wins between the two. However, although the MG3 comes in second place, it's not a distant second. I want to make that very, very clear. And I think what we have now is a car that is a real consideration within the class. So if you're looking for value for money and bang for your buck, the MG is a really good choice. I just think the Fabia is the wiser choice. Thanks for watching our first ever twin test on House of Cars. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know it's been a little bit long, but as I say to people, I do like to go into a lot of detail because I do like to appeal to car buyers. So if you are out there in the market looking to buy a car, then I hope I'm giving you the information that you're looking for when it comes to that. If I do and you do enjoy the videos, then please make sure that you subscribe to the channel. And once you've done that, press the bell button down below, because that's the way you get notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. Tell your friends about it as well. Make sure they subscribe too. Now remember, if you have enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. That's really important. Would you have chosen the MG3 over the Fabia? Have you chosen the MG3 over the Fabia, or did you decide on neither and you went for something like a Honda Jazz or a Peugeot 208? Are you really angry with Ford for stopping the Fiesta? Have you been a Fiesta driver and you want to change your car? What are you considering now? Please let me know in the comment section down below. Now, if you're a bit of a social media buff, then I do Instagram a little bit, and that's at House of Cars 1973. So please give me a follow on there as well, because that helps as well. And remember, whether or not it's small cars, whether or not it's old cars, whether or not it's new cars, slow cars or fast cars, not helicopters, you'll find them all here in the house of cars. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.